Hey, this is Alex Parker from Replicated, and I'm here to talk to you about the Replicated SDK and how we now recommend all of our customers, regardless of packaging, regardless of installation method, whether it's Helm or COTS, we recommend all customers include the SDK as a part of their application to unlock additional replicated functionality within their application. So originally when we developed the SDK, it was meant to help Helm installations get replicated functionality in an environment where COTS wasn't running. While that's still the case, we now have made it so that anyone can deploy the SDK and benefit from it regardless of whether it's a Helm or a COTS installation. And in fact, because of that, it's easier than ever to have a single release that you can create and deploy with both methods so you can support customers that have existing Kubernetes clusters and maybe a GitOps pipeline where they want a Helm chart to install, and less experienced or knowledgeable customers who want to use COTS and its GUI to install your application. So let's take a quick look at how this is possible. So I have here a Helm chart, a Git Helm chart, which is going to be, for the sake of example, my application. And it's all packaged up and ready to go. A couple things that I want to point out. First is let's include the SDK as a part of my app. So the easiest way to do that, if I'm using Helm, is to include the SDK as a dependency in my application Helm chart. It only takes 3 lines of YAML to do that, but if I'm not using Helm, I can just install the SDK as a standalone Helm chart in my application. So even if you're not using Helm, that doesn't stop you from using the SDK, but if you're using Helm, that's easiest and unlocks the most capabilities as far as delivering your app with different installation mechanisms. So I have declared the SDK as a dependency here. Another thing I'll point out is that in my manifests directory, I've created some files I need for COTS to install this application. So I have my COTS application custom resource, which defines my icon for my application, my status informers, etc. And then I have my Helm chart custom resource, which tells COTS how to install my app, my Git Helm chart. So with both of these things, I can enable a COTS installation as well as a Helm installation because this is a Helm chart. So let's head over to the CLI here. And first what I need to do is package up my application. So I'm going to use that U flag to update my dependencies, which is going to pull in the replicated SDK as well as any of my other dependencies that I need. And now that I have that packaged up, that created a TGZ right here, which I'm going to move into my manifests folder. And that manifest folder is where all that COTS specific stuff was too. So I've got that all created now. So now that I have my release all set, I've got a Helm chart, I've got the COTS files that I need, I'm going to do replicated release create. And I'm going to promote this to my unstable channel. So this is going to create a single release with the SDK that can be installed both into COTS and Helm installations. All right, there we go. Let's head over to the vendor portal and come over to channels here. So this is my unstable channel where I have promoted my release. And if we come over to customers, I've got 2 different customers here. I have a COTS customer and a Helm customer. So let's start by installing my COTS customer. So I'm going to go ahead and download this license and then come back to the channel card. And this is where I'm going to see my installation command for COTS. So if we come over here, download the latest version of the COTS CLI and install COTS. I'm going to put this in the Git COTS namespace to separate it from the Helm installation. This will take just a minute to install. So I am going to go ahead and pause this and we'll come back when COTS finishes the installation. All right, so COTS has finished installing. So I'm going to head over to the admin console and enter my password that I provided on installation. Then I'm going to take my license, drag it here, and upload it. Now I don't have any config or any pre-flights for this application, so it's just going to skip right through to the deploying phase. Now if I head over here and maybe open up a new tab so that I don't break that port forward, and I look at the pods in the Git COTS namespace, I see that the SDK did deploy. So I'm in a COTS environment now both COTS and the SDK are running, but they don't conflict, they don't cause any problems. They both can coexist in the environment and serve different purposes. So we're adding new functionality to the SDK all the time. For example, we recently added custom metrics, which allows you to send custom metrics about your application, maybe number of users or things like that, back to the vendor portal to visualize them inside of the vendor portal and understand how your customers are using your application. And so you can use things like that through the SDK in a COTS environment. Now, the same thing would be true for a Helm environment. So let's head back to the vendor portal real quick. We can close out of that and go to customers. And I also have, so we can see that instance is already running. This is the COTS instance that I just installed, that just checked in a minute ago at 2:42. But I also have here, and we can see that we have a COTS version, which is version 1.104.1. We also have an SDK version of 1.0.0-beta 12. Now back to customers, I also have a Helm customer. So I'm going to come here and check out my Helm install instructions. The first step is to log into the registry, which I will do. This uses my license ID to authenticate with the registry, to authenticate me to pull the Helm chart, pull the images that I need, etc. And then I'm going to run an installation. And I'm going to provide this the Gitty Helm namespace. And that has successfully installed. And so once again, if I list pods, this time in Gitty Helm, I can see the replicated SDK. Hasn't come up and running yet because I did that pretty quickly. But now, for both of these situations, whether I have a customer that wants to install with COTS or with Helm, I can package a single release, include the SDK, and deliver my application to all of them. Now, like I said, even if you don't use Helm, if you're a customer using COTS, we still recommend using the SDK for custom metrics and other functionality that's going to be released over time. One of the benefits of the SDK is that because it's packaged with the application, it's updated outside of COTS. So even if a customer never updates COTS, if they're updating your application, the SDK is being updated with it and they're getting access to new functionality. So the SDK is a great tool regardless of your installation method. However, if you're not using Helm yet, we do recommend packaging your application with Helm and in supporting both a Helm and a COTS installation. We've seen a lot of more advanced enterprises wanting to use a Helm chart and a Helm install to plug that into their GitOps pipeline to install vendors' applications into their environments. So packaging with Helm and using both of these methods helps you to meet your customers where you're at, speed up your sales process, and all around have a better experience of delivering your app to your customers.